I know Joe said he was done. Maybe he had to work like. But Calvin did that. I said he would. He always shows up late. He's probably racing here. That is possible. Welcome to the June Omaha Choosers Group meeting.
Do that the whole time.
Seems to be an echo.
So, I'm John Larson, I'm from AIM. We're coming to you from a wonderful cerebral. We're at the AIM Brain Exchange. Wonderful, nice room. Some of the things that are happening this week here at the Brain Exchange is the Highlander Code Camp is going on. There can be only one. 75 North is sponsoring a program for kids from North Omaha and also some diversity so that they can learn to do web coding and stuff. So it's like they're giving up their entire summer. It's like a 7-week course. Wow. Yeah. And they all have MacBook Airs to work on their stuff and everything. It's an impressive program, and they're all here. It's like 14 of them.
Tell me we're not cranking out Ruby on Rails people. The world is enough of those.
Nope. It's going to be HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And as part of this, they have a capstone project where they're going to actually be producing a website for a company. Sweet. That they'll work on it as a team as their final project. So it's pretty cool stuff.
What's the URL for that?
I don't know yet. Oh, East 75 North?
Yeah.
Not sure yet.
Okay.
Yeah, what else is going on? Well, you know how hard it is to get fiber sometimes in your building?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So
Times 15.
we have CenturyLink bringing fiber to the building.
Ooh.
And
They don't have United piping it, do they?
they didn't try any piping.
Oh, okay. So they, last time they did that, it started a little fire.
Who was it?
Building downtown, that,
Was it the Sprint one?
no. What was the building down on the corner by across from
It was,
That was gas.
that's what they call
Yeah, that's what they
call.
Well, okay.
The meeting was marked as being off or something, it was still on.
I doubt that they're working in this town. Anyway, yeah. So they brought the fiber in, they took it all the way up to the 7th floor because that's where communication is. They came back today and looked at things and said that, well, no, the client's on the 8th floor, so you have to run fiber all the way up to the 8th floor from the basement.
stretch it.
What? See, they already have a junction box on 7, so it's really confusing. But we have another group coming to bring more fiber into the building.
Are they bringing 8 stories of fiber or 1 story?
It's going to be interesting. We're going to have a lot of fiber. And you might say it's even the total of it. Don't really have any other major announcements other than, oh, there is no July meeting. Okay. So don't come here in July because it'll be July 4th that night and nobody here.
But you can watch fireworks.
You could watch the fireworks.
If somebody's looking to speak in August, I think Brian's
Brian's looking for someone to speak or a topic. August or a topic. So if you want to email one of us, please go ahead and you'll see about forwarding it on to Brian. So
August.
he's in charge of August.
I've got September, that's gonna be system tap, system profiling. And I think it's two atoms. And the year end, which is yours, I'll should take us through this.
So tonight, Aaron's going to talk about.
Are you gonna talk about Linux news?
I haven't looked at any.
Fedora 25 beta is just around the corner.
Is it?
Linux Mint 18.2 betas just came out. The IRIX style desktop is now available for Linux.
Good. Very, very bad sudo bug.
Oh,
What?
yeah,
Sudo bug.
yeah.
Is that why they were patching sudo recently? More likely.
They your escalation is by taking two
Yeah, one of
without
those,
passwords.
one of those classic, oh, those. If you're just dressing up as suit yet, you really should.
This is the coldest room in the building. Unless that one's even colder.
It's nice and super comfortable. I like it cold ones. Anyway, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to read anything.
Cool. So, anything else? Second one.
Yes. Any questions? No? Alright. We go to take away then. Aaron Grothe will be here tonight talking about Tomoyo.
Tomoyo. Very nice. Don't be giving the warning already. I was just a script. All right. So what is Tomoyo? From Wikipedia, Tomoyo is a feminine Japanese given name, is a variant transcription of the name Tomoko. The name means wise arrow or worldly wisdom. By the way, I am probably butchering this pronunciation. I don't know anybody else who uses this directly. Well, I've got a thing on it, but Tomoyo seems to be the most common pronunciation.
Yeah, and usually you pronounce each syllable the same length. So Tomoyo.
And it sounds cooler that way, so let's just stick with that. Okay, so we define what Tomoyo is. Tomoyo Linux is a Linux security package that provides Mac for Linux. We'll talk about what Mac is in the next couple slides. You can also do some very cool things in terms of training. You actually train the system what you want to run, it'll figure out the policy and generate it and save it, and you can save it dynamically. It's very, very cool in our respect. You can generate policy by hand. You can do some cool stuff in terms of monitoring systems, which is not as trivial in a lot of respects as you'd expect it to be, but they do quite a good job at it. What is MAC? To describe mandatory access control, we'll start with discretionary access control. All of us already live with DAC. The basic idea here is that you are the owner of a resource. An example given, Chad has a file. Chad controls who has access to it. In general terms, it's the owner group world privileges. Whoever owns that file has full control over it, what can be done with it, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty simple. I mean, you live with it. We all live with it today. So MAC is mandatory access control. It is similar to DAC, except there's a concept of the security administrator. Example given, I have an Excel file. And the security administrator can say that I can create a policy that would not enable me to, let me reword this differently. If I have an Excel file and I want to give Chad access to it, and the security administrator goes, no, you can't, I can't. The security administrator has full control over that. He can restrict what I can do as well. You can do some of this on Windows through group policies, but mandatory access control provides a whole load of additional capabilities on it. You can actually theoretically pull privileges from root with mandatory access control, which leads to my thing below that. Mac, depending on the implementation, you can even prevent root from doing things. So the question is, can God microwave a burrito so hot God couldn't eat it? This is what it comes down to. Because root is, in most terms, most systems, God, same thing with administrator. But mandatory access control is not as common for one major reason. It is tougher to use. It does have additional overhead in terms of the machine doing it and in terms of the people using it. So a lot of people think DAC is good enough. If you ever go through the common criteria, the orange books, all that kind of stuff, the levels, after you get past the base level, which most commercial operating systems go, you have to go to MAC. You have to add that level of capabilities. And then above that, there's also rule-based control access systems, RBAC. And RBAC is where you really start dealing with magnets. It can do some amazing things. There's actually a package for Linux out there called RSBAC, and they tend to snipe back and forth about SE Linux people about who is more pure and that kind of stuff. The Linux kernel mailing list and the various groups are always hilarious for this reading. People are so far up their own butts sometimes they can't see any benefit to any other way of doing it. So that's mandatory access control. Anybody got any questions about that? It's just an additional layer of checks and balances against files and systems and stuff like that. So here's a quick history of Tomoyo Linux. It was launched in 2003 and was sponsored by NTT until 2012. They decided to put their resources towards other areas. It's still continuing. Right now, there are 3 distinct versions of Tomoyo to consider. There's Tomoyo 1X. This version set of patches to the kernel and tools. It's not part of the Linux kernel, and never will be because it doesn't use LSM. There's Tomoyo 2.x, which right now is like 2.7, I think. It doesn't do everything that Tomoyo 1X does, but it is implemented as an LSM along with AppArmor, SMAC, SE Linux, and it's integrated with Linux kernel source code. It's been in the Linux kernel source code since 2.6.30, I believe, and AppArmor actually made it in like 2.6.36. So there's a little bit of a gap there between the two of them. So actually, if you ask the question, which was the first LSM besides SE Linux, the answer to that trivia question is Tomoyo. Not that anybody cares, except for the Tomoyo guys. But that did that. One nice thing about that is it also validated the LSM stuff is going to continue to exist and thrive throughout the rest of our time. And there's a third version we call Akari. Akari's works towards bringing all the Tomoyo 1X features to Tomoyo 2.x and 2. Whatever. And they just keep pulling back over there as they just rework the components to work with the LSM type modules. How many of you guys know what Linux security modules are? All right. Way back in the day, SE Linux was not implemented as part of the kernel. It was all out of the tree. And they wanted to merge it into the Linux kernel source code tree. And they said, here's the patches. And Torvald said, no. Because there are multiple, there's not one true way on security. There's not been determined which is the best way to go yet. Why don't you write a series of hooks that any framework can use? So they did that, they did that, AppArmor did that, a couple other groups did that. And they created something called LSM, Linux Security Modules. This provides a whole set of hooks into the whole Linux kernel for controls and checks. And the SE Linux guys implement their stuff on top of it. Then, of course, the Tomoyo guys did, SMAC does it as well, AppArmor does it, there's also Yama. And those are all inside the base Linux kernel. If you pull this Linux course kernel off from kernel.org, you'll see it's there. There's also some LSM modules that exist that are outside of the tree. There's, was it Safe, or Lids, which I believe is defunct now. There's a bunch of different ones floating around. But all LSM is a way to integrate a security module into the kernel. It really works well because it avoids some of the issues we have with systrace, which is you run into a problem between time to check and time to use. Once you turn into that thing, it's a whole other problem. So it's very cool. That's the history of Tomoyo Linux. Tonight we're just going to be showing the Tomoyo Linux that comes with the basic kernel. So why Tomoyo Linux? It has 4 interesting modes in which it runs. It has learning. You dynamically create a policy, figure out what example for what a web server is and isn't allowed to do. And how do you do this? You just run the web server until you get to a point where you're like, I've exhausted every path, I've served every file. An example being, if I have a web server, if I run a wget against it, it should theoretically get every file that's available on that web server. Then if I flip it to a different mode, it won't be learning anything anymore, it'll start taking care of the next thing. So that's learning. Disabled, it won't do anything to your system, but it allows normal operation. You'll want to make sure you know about disabled mode, because when you screw up your policy, and eventually you will, it's just a matter of time, you'll need to be able to get back into it, and the way you normally do is through disabled mode. There's permissive mode, which allows all operations, but it doesn't add the request to your policy. So it doesn't add that additional component to it like learning does. But the one thing about that is, depending on how your logging set, it'll log it all out, which you can use to build a new policy and add additions to it. And the one that's most interesting to us is enforcing. It applies a policy to the system. Operations not explicitly allowed are denied. You can do this by having a policy generator, or you can code them by hand. All we're going to be talking about tonight is the auto-generated ones, because the ones by hand I've had moderate luck with. Mostly what I do is I generate a policy by learning, and then I'll make changes to it as I need to. This is a slide that might be more controversial than I thought it would be, depending on how it looks. Comparing SE Linux to Tomoyo Linux. Tomoyo Linux has an easier syntax. It is path name based like AppArmor. Example being, if SE Shadow is linked to temp Shadow, they are different files to Tomoyo. It's unlike SE Linux, which is object based, but you don't have to relabel all the time. Because if you use SE Linux, you will have to relabel the file system when you put it into enforcing mode periodically for some reason. I still haven't figured it all out. I don't think anyone's ever figured it out. Tomoyo was not created by the NSA, which some people consider to be a bonus for it. Nobody expects Tomoyo Linux. Nobody's out there actually going out there and hacking after it. It seems to be a fancy musician now, right? Yes, exactly. There's a new feature in some of the later Linux kernels. You can actually stack LSMs on top of each other. Like you can stack theoretically, you can stack SC Linux on top of Yama Linux or other things like that. Is anyone doing this outside of people who waste much time in their hands? I don't think so. Because it just seems like you're normally going to pick one additional. You can add an additional thing on top of additional thing until your system runs about 3 operations a day. But it can do it. One thing it has led to them finding some conditions, edge cases, and stuff like that. So it hasn't been necessarily all bad. So theoretically, you can use both of them together. And SE Linux file labeling, I mentioned it twice because you'll hate it. And it'll hate you. What distributions work with Tomoyo Linux? Debian Ubuntu is available out of the box. Fedora CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you need to recompile the kernel for it. They only support SE Linux out of the box. That's their choice. That's the way it is. SUSE, I believe, supports it, but I'm not 100% sure. They still tend to be more AppArmor based. But Arch, it's not the default. You need to recompile your kernel for it. There is some very nice documentation for it, though. Pretty much any distribution which you can compile your own kernel for, you can do it. It's part of the default of the base kernel. So depending on how the patch is, someone could write a patch to go through and take out all that stuff, but no one really does that. I mean, Red Hat doesn't go through and strip it out of their source code for their kernels and stuff like that. And Fedora does it as well. You could, but yeah, easy to do. Does my distribution support Tomoyo? This one command will tell you whether or not it does. Grep Tomoyo write inet network proc KLSIMs. If you get a response, you are halfway there. Now all you need to do is get the tools to control Tomoyo. So I have a VM fired up. And, oops, let me shrink that down a little bit.
No, it's like Debian.
There's a reason it looks like Debian, because it is Debian. Of course, I should just cut and paste this like a man, but
PropNet.
yeah. I've got to be off on that. Yeah. So I have it installed by default, so that's good to have that component there. So we have a Tomoyo capable kernel on the system. Now, we've already done that. Now we need to install the Tomoyo tools.
It's nice to see I'm not the only one who misspells install, by the way.
So it's going to install Tomoyo tools and lib Tomoyo tools. So let's go ahead and install it. And it requires 638 K of disk space for it. Come on, baby. All right, so we need to update grub. That's next. So we just go to the end. Oops. And we need it. Oh, we are already. Jeez. One of the things we're doing here is, whoa. It put that in there, which it normally doesn't do. They've changed Tomoyo on me since the last one. No, this is a fresh machine.
Well, check the write time of the file. Yeah, look at that.
All right. Okay, so that's changed.
Update the slides.
All right. So Now, with the latest and greatest version, we'll actually update your grub config for you automatically. So you see the phrase security equals Tomoyo. That tells it to enable Tomoyo. So this next slide may actually be a lot less impressive than I was hoping it was going to be. So let's do get out of this bad boy. Let's get caps lock right. Now we do reboot. So this next slide, there's a whole section about how this is going to fail coming up, and how it's going to fix this, and how it's going to be cool and stuff. And now I think it's just going to work. So thanks, Debian. Thanks for fixing stuff. Woohoo! I knew I should have installed the tools yesterday. All right. So it's booting now. Let's take a look at the command. Let's edit the command line real quick. See what we got in there. Just make sure security Tomoyo is in there. So. Come on, baby. There we go. So now we are in a state where we don't have a working system. That's what I was really hoping for, to be honest. So that didn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because we don't have a profile for it. It does not automatically dynamically generate a profile for it. So there's two things we can do right now. We can go back into grub, change dynamically during the boot, or we can just go ahead and type disable. And we will go ahead and type disable. You'll be doing this sometime if you run Tomoyo, I guarantee you. So 1 domain, 0 ACL entries, 1 kilobyte used by policy. Normally the policy size gets a couple hundred K depending on how complex you make it. So hopefully, come on, baby, don't do this to me now.
The drive.
I think he used up all the luck last month with his TVM demo.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
So. Come on. I need to get a solid state drive, man. It's so hard that the laptop works, you know? That's all it is.
It's okay, you just do the copy, slap it in, move on.
I might have this horrible fear of what's inside this machine.
Do you have cats?
I have a cat.
Okay, then I would be scared.
Does anyone ask, or do I have to ask? Why would you be scared about having cats in your machine?
Cat
Well, I already know why.
Oh,
Cat hairs everywhere. Get sucked into the laptops, burn the fan out. Yeah, I've opened a few laptops for people with cats.
oh.
Cats are very nice creatures, actually cool, but
Somehow, though, they haven't managed to do that to my computer.
good for you.
First, it also has a tiny ventilation hole.
All right.
Depends on the cat, too.
So let's go ahead and create a base policy. We'll create an empty policy that won't have anything inside it. So it'll be.
If you're not enabling anything, is it going to work?
It'll be an empty policy. I would say yes. My whole confidence has been shaken by the fact that Debbie has changed things.
They changed it now, so.
No. Actually, we're better now. So we've gone through, ran it really quick, and it's just generated a base policy, base information. Now let's go ahead and reboot and see what we get. And my next thing says, now that's better. So, yes.
Is it a init policy for init itself?
No, this is the initialization policy for Tomoyo. We're just creating the base policy for Tomoyo.
So why did you boot? Why did it say-
Because it didn't have one. When it boots during the init policy, it loads the Tomoyo module, and it's looking for the
As
protection.
long as the module would have no policy. Okay.
Yep.
Is there any risks with that? I mean, you obviously can't break out of it.
Well, you can disable it during the boot, or you can go through the thing and boot. I mean, you won't run into as many problems with it as you do during the, because you're actually doing, it's all path name based. It'll work with file systems that don't have the extended attributes and stuff like that. It doesn't have the same limitations. So going back and forth dynamically seems to be okay for the most part. So we have a policy right now that says nothing in it, but it has just blank entries in the right folders for us. So now we're going to reboot. And
With you so far.
yeah, 24 kilobytes used by policy. Didn't ain't too bad.
Just got.
Well, the hard drive thing is still spinning down there, so.
So now we have a system up, we have no policy inside it, but it is fully Tomoyo capable. That's still. I spelled it correctly. Twice would be good. All right, be that way.
This is in your host file?
It should be dynamically picking up since it's in bridge mode. All right, so we have no policy right now. So let's fire up the policy editor.
So you're using like MDNS for it to know the name?
What?
Are you using MDNS to know the name?
I thought it would know it because it's running in just NAT mode locally. I thought normally it would pick that up.
Since you just said bridge mode.
Oh, actually, I'm not sure what I said. Okay,
Oh, well.
that's all right. So we have the basic policy up right now. What is our policy? Empty is disabled, so thank you. Oh, I hit off one key. The one thing you'll learn about the Tomoyo edit policy thing, it sucks. It is the worst single editor that I've ever probably used. It reminds you of it. It is tremendous how bad it is. But because to get out of a thing, you have to hit the thing to go back to it. It's just a pain in the butt. But let's take a look at the policies right now. So the policies on this box right now, we have our 4 different policies. It sets the maximum size of the audit log, learning number of entries to learn before you apply, whether or not you grant logs. So the grant logs and reject logs, every time it does something, you can if it grants the privilege, you can have it log it out to var log Tomoyo. If it's something that rejects, you can have it log it out there as well. You use that for various pieces of information. If you want to try and run this thing like a honey net type situation, that can be tremendously useful in its own right. And go back. So that just lays out the 4 modes we have laid on this. You can add additional modes if you want to. Would you want to? That seems to be pretty complete to me. So we'll set the kernel to learning mode and reboot. So should be S. Let's enter profile number 1. And we should be able to quit. And we should be able to reboot. And it should come up inside learning mode. You can dynamically load some of the stuff, but I found when I can flip between the modes, it works better just to reboot the dynamically.
Do you,
Yes.
with the policies, is it like you can set up several and choose which one you want for the next
Yes.
boot?
You can change all
So
that
you
stuff
have
around.
different
Yeah.
testing times, okay. Wait for the network lights to flash, and here it comes.
Yay. So, while it's happening, I'll just pop the next slide. So, yeah. So Debbie and I's coming out, what, later this month or something?
Hmm.
I'm kind of disappointed because they dropped PowerPC support.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
Well, that'd be the last.
Unless it's the power stuff that's still kind of around.
Yeah, the power stuff is maybe, but I saw an iBook that's only But it'll be getting old for quite some time, so it's a little while. Come on. So that's everything that's currently running on the system itself. So all sorts of information. You can go into it, get additional flow about what files it's hitting, what it's doing with them, all that kind of information is available to you. And you gotta go back.
Going into X, you're gonna get a whole lot more entries.
I'm gonna go back one, session one. I'm gonna just, oh, I've got to go all the way back to the top. Let's go back, yes. So to get out of that, those list of entries, you have to go all the way to the top, hit enter again. Or you can hit X, which will exit out of the editor and not exit you out of the subsystem, and you can go back into it again. So, a Condi, all sorts of, one thing it just gives you is a lot of information about what's actually running in your system, when it's hitting what all that information available. Everything's being done in your system right now. So let's open another tab, and let's open something new. Let's do KSH. All right, let's install KSH first. I had a friend who had every version of make alias. So you type any 4 letters with M, A, K, E, and E in it. You can type EMOC, he had all of them on alias because he just got tired of them. I'm thinking about doing that with installing that kit. Okay, now we fire KSH. Now we head over here, we do a find for KSH. Do a find for KSH. We go back to the policy editor, we do a find for KSH. There we go. And right now, all this run is tput. Make sure back in this, get back to the slides. So let's run a couple commands inside there. Let's do ls, who am I, and ping www.google.com. So now if we go back over to the edit policy, we'll see under KSH, R for refresh, always important to remember. We'll see we have these commands laid out. So right now everything is still inside learning mode. Anything I type in here will be added to it. So if we take a look at ping, what is the guy? It's got access to all of this information. It's pulled stuff from environment variables, it's done network connections to these things, all this stuff up. Yes. So now we have a basic policy for something like KSH. So let's drop the hammer. This is where the fun begins. We're going to change the profile from 1, learning, to 3, enforcing. Now, let's head over here and let's try something interesting like let's see password. Hang on a second.
You changed ping.
Yeah.
Did I change ping?
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Correct. All right, ping's enforcing now, so that's a good news. Let's enforce.
Ooh, ouch.
Now KSH is enforcing. Please be enforcing. I may actually not be enforcing for this because I actually added it to the policy. So now I'm doing R. You see there's a VI in there. You can delete that. Delete selected item. Yes. So now we cut this back. So VI should fail. Oh, KSH, you are a cruel mistress. Password, yes. It's a shortened version of password. It's quite similar in a lot of ways. So I'm feeling pretty good about this.
That's where the users are stored.
Cannot execute, operation not permitted.
Nice.
And so, okay, well, screw you. I've got sudo, who cares? I used this staging method example. We've already done this one. So now I'll just go to root. I don't care. I can't execute that operation either. So I'm limited to what I can do, but if I do pop back to this, KSH, will give me that because I don't have this inside a different, oh,
You're right.
yeah, it's because it's inside a different policy. I set the policy so it couldn't do it either though. So as long as I am me, and I go through this path, that goes part of the whole love fest of this. But we're able to restrict this down. We can actually restrict this down so root couldn't run it as well if we set it a certain way and my turn is on hand. So that is all gone onto the log. It's all been tracked. It's all knows aware of what I'm doing. So as I add additional stuff to it, I can have it build the whole policy for me dynamically. If you have a web server, you can have it pull every page you're going to serve off and then go from there. So it can do some very cool stuff in that respect. Oh, here's another thing. Who am I right now? I am operation not permitted. You're going to see that a lot. If people are ever ask the question, why don't you run a very secure OS in the whole environment? Because it will piss you off. It annoys you. So I got a ping in there, and let me ping Google right now. If I ping nebraskacert.org, it's operation not permitted because that's actually defined inside the policy. So we go back to the policy editor and take a look at what it has for ping. It actually has that explicitly at the bottom what's able to actually hit. And it actually goes by IP address for Google and stuff like that. You can modify the policies to have wildcards and accept wider stuff, which you will end up doing for files and stuff like that, just to have the system run inside enforcement. But what we've done here, keep in mind, is we've just locked down KSH. We haven't locked down the whole system. We can do this at the top level and lock the whole system, and then we can all go, wow, let's disable that and get back in control of it. But the way it works, it gives you the capability to do individual things. So think about it, you have a web server or something running like a firewall running on top of Linux, you can lock down those components. One experiment people have done with Tomoyo, which I'm trying to find somebody who's done it recently, is locking down a VirtualBox in just the components it needs. Because VirtualBox itself does not run access a lot of files, a lot of information. It all goes in direction on that. So that can do some very cool stuff. Just using a very small set of the path. Very cool stuff it can do. So that gives you a kind of idea what it does. But if you really want to get back to actually having control of your system again, you just change the policy back. Which you go to the top, so you can go back to the previous entry. And you can pull stuff in and out as you want to. You can set it to allow, permissive, denied, but it's all pretty much basic. It works pretty well for us. I'm pretty happy with it.
So when you have KSH set to 3, that's going to trickle down through anything inside KSH.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, it's controlled by a KSH in the policy, so I can do.
Because right now that's set to 3.
Yeah, you'd want to actually set the stuff under it as well to 3s as well to enforce their policy because they have their own policies. So I set ping back to 0 disabled to allow that stuff to happen. What you want to do is you want to do that and all the stuff underneath that tree to lock it down all the way. So you can pop out the policy otherwise a bit. Okay. So yeah, you definitely normally want to go 3s everything underneath that component for you. But it won't be able to add anything new to it because it's enforcing mode and stuff like that. So there's nothing new that's going to get added to those entries. But that is one way you can also get around it. But the problem is if you do that, if you have certain stuff running in different modes underneath it, then enforcing, that does provide some potential loopholes because if you can get to VI, you can still start pulling files from other places in the file system.
So it allows you to tailor make an environment for an individual.
But for the most part, normally when I do it, I set everything underneath that to all be enforcing by manually. So. Okay, so we have a policy, we've defined it, we have it laid down what it can and can't do. Let's get out of this. And let's do a reboot. I did not realize I had like 6 reboots in this talk and how long each one would take.
I was on the phone troubleshooting with a rep from an organization today, and I rebooted 6 times just because I changed a setting in their program.
Awesome.
That's their default. Well, reboot.
Yeah.
It's like, all I did was take out the IP address in the server config.
Well, if you ever deal with the cable company, they'll have you reboot your computer every time. Which I was going through this whole thing. It's like, this isn't going to fix problems. This isn't going to fix a problem. then they just would not do anything until I rebooted it and it fixed the problem, which annoyed the hell out of me or something. Well, I was doing everything by the command line. I was doing DHCP release, reacquiring all that stuff.
Ask for level 2.
Well, if the reboot hadn't fixed it, I would have felt a lot better, to be honest. So Tomoyo, very interesting little tool and something. It's available for most of the distributions. It's around. If you're looking, would you run it in a regular desktop? Probably not. Would you run it inside a specialized environment, a firewall, VPN, something like that? Yeah, that's interesting stuff you said there. I'm thinking about actually doing some work on the Nebraska web server this year. I'm thinking I'm actually turning Tomoyo on for that. Because I have SC Linux explicitly disabled because of our PHP will not work with it. Because of 2 packages somebody has to use for some stupid reason. I'm not bitter though. That's important.
Is that why you're typing sudo BS?
So, Tomoyo, edit policy. And we do a find for KSH, and it's not in there. So why isn't it in there? Because I didn't save the policy. It does not dynamically do crap for you. It will not ask you any questions. It will not do anything for you. It will just exit and not save a goddamn thing. Wow. So, well, it's not like this policy is that tough.
Save or release, save often.
Yes, so keep that in mind whenever you're doing Tomoyo Linux. The secret to it is doing everything incrementally, save it. You can save under different names, you can push all the stuff around. It can do some very cool stuff in that respect. But I didn't need a policy that bad for this one. Oh yeah, Tomoyo save policy, that's the name of it. Can you add a command to a profile by hand without going through the learning mode? Yeah, it can be a bit of a pain because you have to have the path right, all that information. For most of the stuff I play around, I do learning mode and I'll change the components to be a little wider if I need to. Seems to work for me reasonably well. Let's take a quick peek at Tomoyo. Let's see Tomoyo. CD set. Tomoyo. Inside there we have the policies. Use the profile, use group, options. You can chase around when you have different policies. A bunch of information about the exception policies. Manager, there. The one I wanted is profile comp. This is what you go through to change the logging information, the depth of the learning entries, all that kind of information. The defaults work for most people. If you are doing something where you want more information, being able to turn the audit logs on for everything, reject log and grant log, will be very useful. Give you information about why something's being allowed and why it's not being allowed. And you'll need that if you're debugging something you're not aware of.
It's just going standard syslog.
It goes to var log Tomoyo, which, if you take a look at this, if there was any entries in there right now, which since I rebooted, there aren't. There would be directories for each one. It actually breaks it out by profile, breaks it out by level, so you have learning, so you have all this stuff separated. It's very nicely done in that respect. I mean, they've been doing this thing goes back to, what was the year, 2003? It's been around 20, it's been around for a long time. They've been editing and designing it for a long time, outside the kernel mostly, but covers the core of it. We took the policy, we took it as Tomoyo. So that's the basics of it. Is it worthwhile to play around? It is pretty interesting what it can do. And one thing about it is I'm thinking about, I take part in capture the flag contests every now and then down at the university and stuff like that. Being able to actually try and find out what people are doing to the system dynamically, what privileges and stuff they're trying to access to be very interesting. If you can actually, one of the things that you notice is you'll run a web service, you have to keep that web service running throughout the whole period, ideally. What happens is the web service will run fine for like the first half hour, then people figure out a privilege escalation or something like that. But if you were to do the all inside learning mode and then set it to enforcing mode before the attack started, theoretically your thing will stay up and keep running throughout. Due to the way this is laid out by path names that being laid out by attributes, you can use it with some stuff like the AppArmor guys figure out how to get PHP to work better with their AppArmor stuff. And I think some of that technology would come over to this as well. You can do certain things with this you can't do with SE Linux directly off the top. But they're both very cool in their own regard. I just had, well, I had pretty good luck with this, so I'm pretty interested in how it works. Potential uses of Tomoyo, highly secure systems. Something if you were actually trying to go to what's equivalent of the old B systems from the old security stuff, this could possibly make it. One thing to keep in mind, if there is some research being done, and this is the Android phone, right now people with Android phone are using every security system possible to play around. There are people doing SMAC, there are people doing SE Linux, there are a lot of experimentation going on that. Because all your code is running inside Dablic, the Java VM, and if you can lock that down, you can theoretically prevent anything from getting out. And given the sheer size, the growth of the phone mobile market, there's a lot of interest going on that. So it can do some very cool stuff. Other potential uses web servers, appliances, VPN, SCADA systems. It would really be nice if some people doing Linux SCADA would start using this, because I think it could do a lot of stuff for them. Because I mean, think about a SCADA system, you're having it where it only has so many different paths. You can flowchart the number of options. And you can prevent that from getting off on those paths. It's a good thing, even if you just get information about it. Systems connected to dangerous networks. If you ever run Wireshark and you ever look at the security advisor for Wireshark, there are a lot of security advisors always coming out for that. And the reason why is because you're running at a high level of privilege, because you're actually hitting up the network card promiscuous mode, stuff like that. So it could do some stuff which might be interesting for that. If you just ran the probe under that, or the TCP get, all that kind of stuff, might have some potential there. VM hosts could help prevent privilege escalation. Right now, if you look at Zen, it's got a 6 or 9 critical vulnerabilities that are all embargoed right now. And there's a whole bunch of love that going back and forth on that. The huge guys are going to drop Zen as their VM because they're concerned about it, which is too bad, because Zen is one of the better ones. Zen is also being used by each and every one of us because Amazon uses Zen, and so is Google and other people. So Zen vulnerabilities do affect us all, but having something like that for that could be very interesting. One thing to keep in mind is the basic idea that you can fully train your system or create policies for you and enforce them, and that the system doesn't change over time. And that can be dangerous in some respects, but it has tremendous power behind it. Some tips. I've already mentioned this a bunch of times, but I'm going to mention it one more time. The interface for Tomoyo edit policy quite simply sucks. To get out of hell, you hit the question mark again. That's how you got into hell. If you hit X, you're out of the editor. There's the whole way the levels are laid out and stuff, it's foobar. It makes sense at some level if you assume that you only could type 3 keystrokes and you have to type each one. It's just like a maze at times. The other tips are build up slowly with it, locking down shells and so on. The shells can do a lot of stuff for you. If you start looking at the concept, if you have a system, you have people running on it that shouldn't necessarily be running stuff on it, be able to lock them down to what they can and can't do if you're doing training, stuff like that. Tremendous capability there. You do a lot of things where, I mean, example being, you have a system where someone's just able to log into it, run the basic commands, that kind of stuff. If you try and generate policies for things like Firefox, it will get interesting because Firefox is almost an OS at this point, so it's Chrome, so you can do a lot of stuff with it. One thing that really kind of annoys me is there used to be a graphical editor for this called GPET, G-P-E-P-T. I cannot find a version of it out there, but I'm thinking I might just write one because it can't be that tough because the policies are not that complex. And just write the Qt either with Python Qt or just use regular Qt and C++ to it. But it needs a better interface, just straight up. There's no other way around it. If they had a better interface, it would be much more popular. I have no doubt about that.
So you're saying I should just write an Emacs mode for him?
Yeah. Overhead. This is always one of the questions people want to know. So you saw when you loaded that A policy was using a 28K of space. A typical Tomoyo policy will use up about 100K, so not that bad. The other answer is it depends. It depends on the complexity of your policy, when it's running, so on and so forth. What is the system load on it? It tends to be, the response is negligible. So what does that mean? Because normally you're doing it just when it invokes commands and stuff like that. It's not like actually like adding overhead on. It does a certain number of checks per file operation, stuff like that, depending upon the policy. So there is an overhead. I've seen numbers of 10%, less, more. It depends upon. It really comes down to you have to pretty much baseline and figure out how your policy works out, how the checks work. But in my experience, it runs just fine on pretty crappy hardware going on fast. So it doesn't work too bad in that respect. Summary, Tomoyo is nowhere near as popular as SE Linux. Everybody who runs Red Hat, Fedora, whatever, gets SE Linux set and messing with or enforcing that.
It's usually enforced.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Some I know there was a couple of distributions that were, forks of Fedora that were set to permissive. I think they're actually set to enforcing nowadays. You're right. So
I think it might have been when they went to RHEL 7.
yeah. But so that is the way it is. SE Linux is installed by default with Red Hat Linux and all the various distributions, so it has a great deal of monitor behind it. Tomoyo is available for a lot of different distributions. Almost anyone can install if they want to. It is worthwhile and interesting in its own right. It does its own thing. It's definitely got some capabilities. If you ran into a situation where you're looking at like you're hosting a large website, have high availability stuff, I would consider almost thinking that this could be used to help lock down PCI type systems and stuff like that. Yeah, very interesting to see how it works in honeypots. Tomoyo is domain type enforcement, not role based. So it isn't as complete as SE Linux in that respect. SE Linux can do things that Tomoyo can't do, and Tomoyo can do some stuff that SE Linux can't do. That's just the way of life. So that's a quick rundown. That's a quick view of overall what it can do, how it's laid out, what you can do. If you're playing around with Arch or anything like that, you can install it without being a big complexity. It's just a couple of changes, and actually I have a couple of links at the end. Tomoyo's homepage has all the information. It's available in English as well, and English is actually pretty good in some respects. So they've went through and had some people go through and do the translations again, stuff like that. Arch Linux has a whole page about how to install it and stuff like that. It's not too bad. Debian Linux, well, their Tomoyo Linux page is largely what I did. It says install the Tomoyo Linux tools and enable it in the Grothe config, and then you're running Tomoyo Linux, and then refer to their documentation. So, but it's been around for that for quite a while as well. One other site that's done some interesting stuff with the Tomoyo Linux is the embedded Linux guys. If you ever played around with the embedded Linux stuff, they are trying to get Linux everywhere that's not yet, your wristwatch, your toilet, wherever it needs to go. That's their goal. So, but they've been doing some stuff with Tomoyo as well, which has been kind of cool. Because in those situations, once again, Linux on your toilet, there's not a whole lot of options. Flush, don't flush. Whatever
Just
have
have
it
it
all
automatically check if it's yellow, like
Well,
no.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I think syslogs would be nice to have on there.
I got it about a second after.
I knew you'd laugh. That's why I said it in the dead
Just
end
know
voice.
it's your final later.
Yeah. But actually, there was an episode of Scrubs where they called it Dr. Toilet, just measure all your stuff to figure out your health and stuff, because you find out a lot of stuff from that. To go totally into a different area. But that's the basics of Tomoyo Linux. If anybody wants to play around with it, has any questions, you have my email address. It's ajgrothe@gmail.com. It works pretty well. What it can do. It really comes down to if you're looking at appliances, that type of stuff, micro embedded type stuff. It can do some amazing stuff. If you start thinking along the lines of like places where Linux is popping up nowadays, like voting machines, pickle machines, actually, for selling and gambling and stuff like that. The ability to lock stuff down through this with a simpler policy type information can be very cool on its own. Can it lead to its own security holes? Potentially, but what can't? So that's the basic of my talk. Anybody have any questions?
What do you compare it to AppArmor? You talk about SE, so I'm curious about AppArmor.
Yeah, AppArmor they're both patented and based, they have a lot of similarities
Right.
between them. So I know the AppArmor guys a little bit, so I've always been kind of a fan of it. I like the learning mode. This works quite well. AppArmor, I didn't really find it good. There's some stuff in that. They're different, but they have a lot of similar. They do have those similarities in the way that they go and stuff. I find this to be a little lighter, a little easier to use for me, just learning mode and stuff like that. And AppArmor, the problem with that is kind of once SUSE quit backing it. What happened to that is the AppArmor guys went off and formed a company called Mercenary Linux. Do not hit the website because it's not their website anymore. Just a tip: do not hit mercenarylinux.com. What happened there is they did that. So they now the one guy is working at Microsoft, and the other couple other people from Unix or somewhere else. I don't know where that. It doesn't have as much active development on it. Tomoyo still seems to have some pretty interesting people because of the Android type area and stuff like that.
It's still on SUSE, so I assume it's still supporting it.
They support it, but they let the developers go. So, I mean, they still support it in that respect. I like when things like what Tomoyo has done when it seems to be reasonable and stuff like that. I mean, of course, you'll find people out there who love smack as well. The security toolkit. I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's like, wow, it took a weird turn there. But
There's a sound bite. You can
people love smack, but no, App Armor has got its own stuff. I like the way it was laid out. It did some cool stuff, like I was mentioning with PHP lockdown stuff. They had that figured out a long time before anyone else. They had really good documentation stuff like that.
We'll see something in Ireland called like you cannot enforce the policy of setting containers with that policy, like stuff like that. It's like new and the latest version. I haven't delved into it, but I looked at it before.
Wow, no, I'm not looking at that. I thought you'd
That
have.
armor policy within the container, right from the outside. It's just in the latest, like 17 for the
Okay.
Docker. But I haven't. I just saw it. I did a Docker info. I was like, oh, that armor capabilities, whatever. So, yeah.
I'll have to take a look at that. I have not taken a look at any of those since they really, because I mean, this will work over at the top level, on top of the containers itself, all the Docker one thing. But
I don't know, it's brand new, right?
yeah, okay, I'm definitely something I'm saying look at. So yeah, that's definitely something to look at. If App Armor does get into the Docker containers and provides that capability to the base host, that would be fascinating. So, okay.
A lot of new stuff is already in Docker. I haven't touched the one of them.
Well, the problem with Docker right now is the whole Moby question. They try to rebrand the open source version under Moby because they want to keep the commercial version going. There's a whole, I think right now you're seeing if you ask the question, what is Docker? Docker is nothing but LXC. Initially, it was nothing but LXC with a lot better press. That's where it started. And since then, they've gone their whole entire different route with it. Stuff like that. Then you start looking at things like LXD, which can actually do things like migration, stuff like that on top of the LXC type stuff. LXD being supported by Ubuntu and stuff like that. Which is cool. No, I don't know about that. But App Armor's been around for a long time. It's got support still happening and stuff. But it's not, I don't know who's the corporate sponsors nowadays. But if they do inside containers, that would be very cool to look at. That's all I got. We got other questions?
MLS support?
Nope.
Multi-level security?
What? Well, you have to actually rename files and stuff like that. You'd create KSH1, KSH2, and have them under different policies and stuff like that. There's one enforcing level by default on the way it's laid out.
This seems to be very system-wide, so you're going to say this user has access to this program interface, or just completely system-wide?
It's pretty much used system-wide.
Okay.
It's more for the embedded type systems, stuff like that. It doesn't have everything you need for the role-based type stuff. It's more made for embedded system stuff. That's part of the trade-off. You get less overhead and stuff. Cool. So no meeting next month?
No, so the reminder is there is no meeting next month because of the Independence Day holiday. August meeting, either someone will present that Brian finds. If you would like to present, please contact one of us. We will get you in contact with Brian, or a subject that maybe you wish to hear about. So thanks for coming this month, excuse me. And we'll be heading next door. You can hit the stop share. And awesome. Thanks for coming. Cool.
Thanks, Aaron.